We've all heard the recent news of how Khamzat Chimaev had to pull out of his fight against Robert Whittaker due to severe illness. I don't want to speculate on Khamzat's medical condition and I wish him a speedy recovery. But this did remind me of reports from late 2020. At the time, Khamzat had trained through severe illness despite coughing up blood. He ended up in hospital in serious condition and it almost ended his career. Eventually, he recovered and made his comeback, but fast forward 4 years to January 2024 and he was hospitalized again. This time, he was covered in rashes. Eventually, he returned to training and was scheduled to fight Whittaker, but 1 week out from the fight, he had to withdraw. His team was forced to make the following statement: "The persistent illness that Khamzat has been battling for major parts of the training camp could not be cured in time. He has been in and out of hospitals several times." Following the news, many people were commenting about Khamzat's poor immune system online. How can a fighter train so much and so hard but still be in such poor health? Even Dana White recently said how every time he gets close, he gets really sick. Could Khamzat's hard training camps potentially play a role in this? Only his doctors know. But let's look at the scientific link between intense training and immune system function. Combat sports are typically performed at high intensities. In sparring, explosive intervals are followed by brief recovery periods. Oftentimes, training sessions are taken to complete exhaustion. The same principles are also applied to sport-specific conditioning sessions. Regular interval training improves immune function in the long run if athletes recover adequately. Unfortunately, many fighters struggle to sit still and rest. It's not unusual for combat athletes to train 2 or 3 times a day, 6 or even 7 days a week. They often feel like they have to outwork their competition. Sometimes this can turn into a compulsion or an obsession. How can I just sit on the couch while my future opponents work hard to improve their skill, strength, and gas tank? Unfortunately, overreaching and overtraining are not rare amongst fighters. The line between overreaching and overtraining is blurry. Overreaching is an accumulation of training load that leads to a drop in performance. It requires a few days to weeks to recover from. Chronic overreaching without adequate rest can eventually lead to the so-called overtraining syndrome. Signs, symptoms, and severity can differ between individuals, so it can be hard to diagnose, but performance typically stagnates or declines for multiple months. Overtraining is particularly common amongst high-performance athletes who train for 4 to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for multiple months without sufficient rest. Sounds like the typical training schedule of a pro fighter. Overtraining syndrome is often seen as a protective mechanism. The body shifts from adaptation to recovery. In a way, it's forced rest. Some people also refer to it as burnout or chronic fatigue. Overtraining can affect multiple bodily systems, including the immune system. Your genome and training history will affect how well your body handles high-intensity training and how soon you enter overtraining territory. Here's what happens in your body with overreaching and overtraining. A meta-analysis from 2021 found that interval training can temporarily suppress the immune system. Lymphocytes and neutrophils are 2 types of white blood cells, the body's immune police. The number of lymphocytes is typically reduced from 30 to 180 minutes after intense exercise. Prolonged high-intensity training also impairs the function of neutrophils. As a result, the body is less capable of identifying and killing pathogens in the hours after intense training. This creates an open window for infections. Interval training taken to exhaustion on consecutive days without adequate rest increases the risk of impaired immune function. Elevated stress hormones can exacerbate these effects. In response to intense exercise, the body activates the sympathetic nervous system. As part of the fight or flight response, heart rate and blood pressure increase. The body releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to overcome the stressor. During the recovery period, the vagus nerve reactivates the parasympathetic nervous system, also known as rest and digest. If recovery is neglected, the sympathetic nervous system can go into overdrive. This seems to be particularly common with high-intensity anaerobic sports like combat sports. Without proper rest, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline become chronically elevated. Resting heart rate and blood pressure go up, the immune system is suppressed. Poor sleep quality and insomnia further diminish sports performance and well-being. Severe and prolonged overtraining can eventually impair cortisol production. It can blunt growth hormone release during your sleep, which further hinders recovery. Overtraining can also crash testosterone levels in men. In women, a decline in estrogen can lead to the absence of menstruation. As a result of these hormonal changes, energy levels drop and depression-like symptoms might set in. Overtraining can cause accumulative stress on your muscles, bones, and joints. This triggers immune cells like macrophages and mast cells to release pro-inflammatory cytokines and histamine, resulting in systemic inflammation. Glucose transport into the muscles is inhibited. Depleted glycogen stores may explain heavy legs and muscular fatigue with overreaching and overtraining. Some studies have also found elevated oxidative stress, which further intensifies inflammation. In response to the inflammation, the central nervous system induces what's often called sickness behavior. Your mood and behavior change to encourage rest and recovery. Researchers suspect that the initial hyperinflammation is eventually followed by immunosuppression. The body's attempt to reduce inflammation with anti-inflammatory molecules weakens the immune system. Overtraining can also affect how the body uses and stores nutrients. In response to systemic inflammation, the liver increases glucose production to support healing. This can create a catabolic state where the body breaks down tissues like muscle for energy. It can result in weight loss and an overall decline in energy levels. When the immune system diverts its resources to tissue repair and inflammation management, its ability to fight infection can be suppressed. Excessive training is not the only trigger for the overtraining syndrome. Prolonged and intense exercise, especially in hot environments, can lead to extreme sweat loss. Sweat is not just water leaving your body, you also lose vital minerals and vitamins. If these are not replenished between sessions, this can inhibit sports performance and immune function. Ultimately, it can lead to nutrient deficiencies, especially if an athlete's diet is also insufficient. Insufficient calorie, carbohydrate, and protein intake are not uncommon amongst fighters, and they are well-established triggers of overreaching and overtraining. Fighters who train 2 to 3 times per day might end up in a significant calorie deficit. They might also struggle to replenish their glycogen stores. Chronic energy deficiency and glycogen depletion further increase stress hormones and inflammation post-exercise. If protein is also neglected in the diet, this can further affect recovery and immune function and accelerate muscle loss. Even small daily energy deficits of 300 to 400 calories can become significant when added up across multiple months, for example during an 8 or 12-week fight camp. Travel and dehydration in the final stages of a weight cut can further weaken the immune system. The result is an increased risk of illness, for example upper respiratory tract or skin infections. The UFC Performance Institute actually warns athletes to take precautionary measures when they travel to their fights. This includes picking a window seat away from the restrooms, turning up the ventilation, using a saline nasal spray, wiping down surfaces, and using hand sanitizers to avoid germs. Fighters are some of the hardest training athletes in the world. If training is not periodized, this can come at a high price. The different factors of overtraining reinforce each other in a vicious cycle. This snowball effect explains why the recovery process can be extremely long and challenging. Typically, it requires several weeks or months of complete rest. So how do you prevent it? How do you know if you approach overtraining territory? Detection and prevention can be challenging, but there are some early warning signs of overreaching and overtraining. Watch this video next to learn more. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. As always, train hard, recover smart, and fight easy.